So here we are, less than 30 days from one of the biggest changes that most of us are ever going to experience. Now, I talk a lot about changes each and every week, and what I'm seeing is a lot of agents are not prepared, not ready for the rule changes, and most importantly, they are not ready to explain why they are worth the commission they are charging. Now, on the surface, this 60-minute webinar might seem little, but it took almost 2 months of planning, being brave enough to reach out to one of my, to our guest speaker, who is one of my business heroes, almost 500,000 marketing messages to get you here. And quite honestly, one panic attack later, I get to share an idea that I know will reshape our industry for the better. So if I could be a little bit vulnerable, I'm going to ask you to be vulnerable. I want to ask you a favor. Can we just take 10 seconds in your own head, where you are in your seat, or hopefully not driving, and I would be grateful if you could take time and think about a time to where you mustered all your courage and bet big on yourself and did something that you were scared to do. So go ahead and do that now. 10 seconds. What'd you do that you bet big on yourself? Now, that being said, I'm grateful for you and your time, and I'm going to assure you that the value per second is going to be as high as possible. Hey everyone, my name is Ryan Miracle, and welcome to Agent Launch's first ever private online event, and I'm thrilled to have you today. So what I want you to do is we're going to go ahead and warm up the chat before we bring on Jeff. So what I want you to do right now is I want you to tell me why you are here today. Now, not just that I just sent you an email and invited you or sent you a DM, but what isn't working in your business that you are here trying to look to fix? So go ahead and drop that in the chat. Why are you here today and what are you trying to fix? So while we're doing that, I'm going to go over a couple housekeeping things. Once again, drop it in the chat. So the agenda for today, once again, my name is Ryan Miracle. I'm going to get you a little bit of details of who I am. We're going to spend some time with Jeffrey so he can answer your questions and some questions that I prepared for him. Make sure that you stay to the end because Jeffrey has been kind enough to give us a gift, and I'm going to be giving you one as well for your time with us. So the goal for today is to help you figure out how to work with one client that is going to help you get paid more and work less, which I don't know about you guys, but that's kind of been the goal for all of us for a long, long time. So why this matters is, once again, as a real estate industry on the lending side and on the real estate side, we're not taught how to attract our ideal client. We're not taught how to actually run a business. What we're taught is how to write a contract and not get sued. And sometimes that even falls short as well. So the current problem is we are all out here trying to solve our own money problems. And there's a huge disconnect between your clients who are served thousands of marketing messages every single day that go over their head because they're not speaking to them. So what we're going to do is we're going to help you break through that obstacle of being lost in the marketing messages that are out there and like throw a needle into the heart of your ideal client. So we're going to help you go from not having an ideal client, helping you understand why it's important and how to get started. And once again, you got to stay around to the end because I have something really special for you. So in my household, I have 3 girls. So it's my wife and my 2 daughters. So I am neurotypical, but in my house, we have a lot of ADHD minds that are non-neurotypical or neurospicy. So we talk a lot about how your brain works, how to hack your brain. Now, I bring this up because my brain might work a little bit different than yours. Jeffrey's brain might work a little bit different than yours. It doesn't mean that the concept that you're hearing isn't valid and it doesn't warrant further explanation. So if you get stuck on something, if something doesn't make sense, please drop it in the chat. We want to make sure that you get enough value out of this so you can progress and move forward with your ideal client. So once again, if something doesn't make sense, ask your questions in the chat and we'll make sure to get to them. So who I am, once again, my name is Ryan Miracle. I'm a loan officer with Ruoff Mortgage. I'm a husband, I'm a girl dad, I'm a dance dad. And by God, we just got our dance bill for this upcoming year and it is ugly. So pray for me. I'm also a cat dad and a Great Dane dad. And here's my 3 beautiful girls. All right. So once again, I've been a loan officer, over 3,500 closings, approaching $1 billion in closings. Last year, we had a 9-day clear to close average, and I'm a marketing nerd. So why am I doing this? For the same reason that you're probably here. So I am doing this because for like 18, well, this is going to be my 20th year. So 18 of those years, I was the coffee and lunch loan officer. And I got to tell you, being on this side and trying to have value and show, make offers of coffee and lunch, it sucks because you get the door slammed in your face a lot. So it wasn't until reading Jeffrey's book Lingo and a couple other pieces that I was able to really break free of that. And if I had to guess, you were probably running into a lot of those same problems trying to break through the noise with your ideal client, or which is any client. So inside of Agent Launch, here's the formula that we teach. We teach your core offer, we teach your MIFGI, we teach you how to lead generate, and then we teach you how to do dramatic demonstrations, kind of like what you're seeing here. We're not going to spend too much time on that today, but inside of Agent Launch, this is what I'm offering you to help you work with your ideal client and figure out these pieces. So stick around to the end. I'm going to go a little bit deeper than that. So without further ado, we're going to get right into why you guys are here, which is Mr. Jeffrey Shaw. I'm going to bring him on right now. So Jeffrey, how you doing today, sir?
I'm great, Ryan. I've already taken a bunch of notes just listening to you.
Thank you. I appreciate the kind words. So if everyone, once again, the chat is still warm, go ahead and say hi to Jeffrey. Once again, he is one of my business heroes. And I don't know if you can't see it right now because of long sleeves, but I got goosebumps right now. So if you guys are excited, drop it in the chat, say hi to Jeffrey.
Very nice. Thank you.
All right. So Jeff, once again, I know a lot of these people are meeting you for the first time. So why don't you give us a short synopsis of who you are, and then we'll get into the questions from there.
Yeah. Happy to, but I have to say, here's something I'm really excited about watching the chat and seeing how many of the folks want to reach their ideal client. So yay for that. Here's something kind of fascinating. I recently launched the Exceptional Business Academy. And before we launched, I sent out a questionnaire to the attendees and asked them, what did they most want, just like you did? And what did they think needed to be done? The number one thing people asked for was more of their ideal clients. Something no one asked for was to improve their branding. And here's what I'm here to tell you. There's a direct connection between your brand messaging and getting your ideal clients. It was fascinating to me that this group of entrepreneurs that I would be working with for 2 months all wanted the same thing, more ideal clients, but none of them saw the connection to achieving that goal, equating it to brand messaging. And I'm here to tell you what we're going to talk about today has everything to do about attracting your ideal clients and filtering out the non-ideal clients. So it's interesting that people intuitively don't see the solution for what the problem is. So I'm really excited to get into that. Okay, my background. So if you were to Google me today, you would see that I'm a business coach, a speaker, author of a couple of books, Lingo and The Self-Employed Life, are my 2 books that are currently out. I'm the founder of the Self-Employed Business Institute, founder of the Exceptional Business Academy. So I do a lot of online education. So that's what you'd find out today. But I think what's more important is how I got here. My original career, as I describe it today, is I was a family portrait photographer for the most affluent families in the United States for 40 years. So what's interesting about that is I didn't come from that world. I grew up very lower middle class at best, just down the street from the trailer park, if you will. And I ended up being the photographer for the richest people in the US. How? By exactly what I'm going to teach you today, by exactly what we're going to talk about and really getting to understand the lingo of who you have deemed to be your ideal clients. Because the fact of the matter is you can break into any world you want if you're willing to do the work to understand their world and to understand their lingo. So that to me has almost more significance, my career as a photographer, because it turned out it was a 40-year learning lab that now could be applied to everything that I teach today. So I like to say, and I speak a lot in the luxury business. And what I like to say is I don't just know that market. I was in their closets for 40 years. But at the end of the day, this is about buyer psychology, right? Really understanding what makes your ideal clients tick. And we're going to figure that out for you.
So Jeff, to give you a little bit of background, and once again, I've prepped you a little bit, but we are in kind of unprecedented times when it comes to real estate. So we have the NAR lawsuit. I'm sure that you've heard about that in the news. Mm-hmm. We're dealing with record low inventory. It's improving, but still not where we need it to be, and record high interest rates for most of our careers. Mm-hmm. So why are you the right person to be speaking on this right now to this group of people?
Gosh, so many reasons. One is the change in your careers, but here's the reality. Change is constant. Because I've been in business for 40 years, I have lived through and brought my various businesses through various significant world changes. I was a New Yorker when 9/11 happened. Of course, then there's the Great Recession. Now we've all gone through a pandemic. Every time there's a significant change in the world, there is a significant change in what people value. So we constantly have to reevaluate what people value, what's important in their lives. You're faced with, brought on by perhaps not a world event, but brought on by circumstances outside of your control, which similar to any other crisis, brought on by something outside of your control per se, that you now have to deal with. And the best thing you can do for yourself is figure out how to deal with it. And everything else, everything can be figured out. But again, it all comes down to one thing, which is understanding the mindset, behavior, and how the people you want to reach, how they tick. And I like to use the term how people tick because it's more encompassing. It's not singular, like understanding their demographic or understanding their behavior, understanding their mindset. To really understand what makes somebody tick, it's like all those things, because that's real life to them, like what they choose and how they go about. So that's certainly a significant reason for all of you. But I will also say that, we're also living in a time, and this is something I'm out promoting a lot these days, is that great isn't good enough anymore.
Can
Right?
confirm.
Yeah. I mean, so I like to say today, great isn't good enough. We have to be exceptional. And only the exceptional are going to rise to the top, stand out, and get noticed. I don't care what your field is. Great isn't good enough because consumers today expect great. They expect great customer service. They expect great quality. If you give them great, which is what they're looking for, they're not impressed. So you as an agent have to figure out, how can I be exceptional as an agent? How can I stand out above the rest that you're moving people from great to exceptional? Here's the last reason why this is important, particularly this topic that you have brought forward. An amazing bit of research was done recently. It showed that people make a 70% decision on their own to hire you before they've contacted you. Think about that. So people have come to a decision 70% on their own that they want to work with you as an agent. You have to ask yourself, where are they getting this information? They're getting it from all the messages you're putting out in the world. They're forming an opinion about you on social, what they find in Google, websites. They're gathering their own information because consumers and decision makers are empowered. They're doing a self-vetting process before they even reach out to you. So there's never been a more important time that we need to understand how we're coming across to the world of people that we want to meet and attract.
That's fantastic. And the fact that you are touching on that we need to be better at our jobs, it's really, really important. So while I don't know why that's not working right, but what I want you guys to do is, if you have been found before someone reached out to you, before like they knew who you were beforehand, go ahead and drop that in the chat. If a customer has called you because of your reputation online, like Jeff was talking about, so that plays into it. So in your book, Lingo, you discuss the importance of...
Ryan, can I say to them something? Here's the biggest problem, though.
Yeah, please.
What about the people that you're not hearing from? That's what I would worry about. What about the people that you're not hearing from because they formed an opinion or you didn't stand out?
Ooh.
That's what you want to worry about. Why didn't you want to figure out, why haven't you stood out? And it goes back to, almost what you were saying under the current circumstances about not being sued with all these new regulations, worrying about not being sued. Again, why is this more important than ever? Because if you build such significant relationships with the people that you're meant to serve, such that they feel completely seen, heard, and understood, there's no relationship of any kind, intimate or professional, that somebody's ever going to say to you, gosh, you know me so well, I feel completely seen, heard, and understood, therefore we must break up, right? Or therefore I'm going to sue you. You actually gain grace by building better relationships. And I think gaining grace is really important at this time of transition when, this may not go as perfectly smooth as we'd like.
I 100% agree with you. I mean, because we've all made mistakes on files, on contracts, on closings, and once again, if they feel like you are on their team, they're going to roll past that really quickly.
Yeah.
So, in your book, you talk about in the book Lingo. By the way, I highly recommend everyone get that if you haven't. You talk about the importance of speaking a secret language. So, how does that tie into like the baseline? There it is. Beautiful book. I'm working my way through it right now.
Yeah.
So how does the secret language play into, like, most of our agents here are at the starting line of trying to figure this out. How does the secret language play in?
All right. So I describe lingo. First of all, lingo, it's in a tactical form. It's the words you're going to use and you're going to learn today, like how, what are the, I got referred to as the 5 elements, right? How do you develop a language? It's a secret language in that the most powerful thing you can do is compel somebody and they don't know why they're being compelled. They just feel so perfectly aligned with you that they're drawn in, right? That's why I refer to it as a secret language, because I often describe this power as almost a little frightening, as power often can be. You have 3 kids. I have 3 kids, a boy and then 2 girls. My second child, my oldest daughter, who now is, part of my team. So she's fantastic, but she was such a powerful little kid. I used to say to her mother that if she uses her power for good, it'll be great. If she uses it for evil, we're all in trouble, right? She was a really powerful kid. And this is reality. I think a lot of people are, when you gain the power of attracting your ideal clients, and it starts working so well, you realize how much power you have. And it's because it almost could be manipulative, but it's not manipulative because you're doing it with integrity.
Okay.
But what you're doing is you're creating the environment for the results you want. By speaking their lingo, their secret language, what you're doing is you're creating the environment. You've predetermined the results you want. But now you're going to say and do what needs to be said and done that's going to hook them. And you're going to be pulling them in. They don't even realize it's happening. So that's why I refer to it as a secret language, because really what you're building is such depth of connection that people are drawn to. And this is, again, I've been in business for 40 years. This is more important than it ever has been, because the biggest change I have seen over those 40 years is people make a decision whether to work with you or not based on how they feel about you, more than whether you're the best at what you do anymore. Right? I mean, we all have a long list, I'm sure, of businesses we will do business with, businesses that we won't, because of how we feel about them, whether we feel aligned with their values. As woo-woo as it sounds, people are making more of an energetic decision whether to work with you than they ever have before. They need to feel like you get them and that you feel aligned with them. And that's what the secret language does.
Okay. I think I couldn't have explained that better myself. So thank you, sir. So once again, starting at the starting line. So what are the 1 to 2 elements that our audience needs to consider when they're starting to build the foundation for figuring out who their ideal client is?
All right, well, I have to give you all 5 because I'm not going to give an incomplete picture
fire
here.
away,
I'm going to give you the whole kitchen sink. So, and we can go through them pretty quick. So the 5 elements, I'll just name them and we'll backtrack a little bit. So they are perception, familiarity, style, pricing psychology, and then the words. So here's a key thing for everyone to understand. Businesses throughout history have innately been built backwards. Right. So people have an idea of a business they want to build, or they have a skill set that they want to leverage, or they have an interest in a profession like real estate that they want to go into. So they go into that industry, or they build that business, and then they spend the rest of their life trying to get people to fit into the box they built.
Ooh.
Okay. The right way to build a business, which is where lingo comes in, is understand the people you're serving deeply and build the box they want to jump in. And then it's not so hard. So these 5 elements are the emotional triggers that I have researched and done and used myself. These are the 5 emotional triggers to get people much more likely to jump into the box that you have built for them. The last one being the words. The problem is, like I said, people, whether they start a business or go into a profession, they load up their bio, build the website. They just throw everything on the internet from their own head. But then they try to fit people into that box. So, and the 5 elements again, and I'm going to go through them in detail, but they're perception, familiarity, style, pricing, words. Okay, so perception, what does that mean? You cannot go past go. There's no place to go in trying to attract your ideal clients unless you are willing to understand how they see the world. That's what I mean by perception. You have to step into the world of those that you want to serve. Again, I grew up lower middle class and ended up being the photographer for rich people. How? I willingly went to where they went in life. I went to the stores, the restaurants. I went where they went. And as an objective observer, paid attention to if I were them. And I'm very clear now that I wasn't fooling anybody. Like I looked like a hick going into these luxury brand stores in New York City. I don't know how I didn't get kicked out, but I'm sure I didn't look like I belonged there. But I went there with the right intentions, and I paid attention to if I were the buyer I want to attract, my ideal customer, what do I need to see, hear, and feel? So you have to think about the buyers buyers or sellers of real estate that you think you can best serve. Really get to understand their perspective, how they see the world, how they want to be. Like for a buyer, how do they want to be seen in the world? Because their home choice is sending a message to anybody and everybody they ever invite to that house. How do they want to be perceived? Do they want to be perceived as modest? Do they want to be perceived as showing it all, right? Something in between. Are they of an intellectual type? They want to be seen as smart, right? So you want to understand how do they want to be perceived in the world, buyers and sellers, in order to really step number 1 is to be able to position and understand your clients deeply by understanding how they see the world and how they want to be perceived by the world. Okay, so that's number 1. Number 2 is familiarity. And I have to say, realtors are at such an advantage here because you know the basics of familiarity. Familiarity is creating an atmosphere that feels innately, subconsciously familiar to the people you're trying to get a buy-in from. Now, of course, there's the classic story in real estate, bake cookies, apple pie, right? Why does that idea exist? Because it creates familiarity, right? The minute we smell those cookies, we think of home. We have a feeling of home. Miami, for example, as a city, Miami has a patented scent. It's called Hope. And I figured this out because when I was moving to Miami and looking at various homes and condo buildings, they all smelled the same. I said, this is interesting. And I knew it was branding. I'm smart enough to know it's like this city is branding itself through a smell. Sure enough, I looked into it. A local company called Dr. Aromas created this scent. It was patented and taken over by the city of Miami, Hope. You can buy diffusers, but it has a signature smell. So that's part of Miami's brand image. So that you can buy those diffusers and bring them home, and every time you smell it, you'll think of your vacation or trip or living in Miami. And to this day, I've since moved from Miami, but when I go back, the most rewarding thing, as soon as I smell that Hope and I recognize that smell, it's like being home again. So you want to think about to me, in real estate, familiarity and really understanding your clientele. I'll give you a specific real estate story. When I was looking again to move to Miami, one of the neighborhoods I checked out, and if there's anybody here from Miami, mention that in the chat. The area that appealed to me was part of South Beach, and it was an area called South of Fifth. And several people had told me, check it out, check it out. I didn't even know if I wanted to live in South Beach, but I checked out this area of South of Fifth, which means it's the 5 blocks south of Fifth Street. And it was the most exclusive part to live in South Beach. And I was like, this is really beautiful. And went there with a realtor, and the condo was super modern, nothing like I had ever lived in before. But the environment of South of Fifth was overwhelmingly comfortable to me. I wouldn't have identified it as familiarity emotionally, but I just knew it was overwhelmingly comfortable. The landscape style, there was a park with the way the paths kind of curved. I was instantly at home, instantly found an apartment, signed a contract. I was renting it originally. I drove down to Florida with my Lexus SUV, drove that to the dealership, traded in, and left with a Mini Cooper because I'm like, I'm living in South Beach now. I don't need an SUV. Immediately sold. Shortly after that, I contacted an accountant to move my business to Florida, and I told him, how excited it was. And the only thing I expressed to him, I said, but unfortunately, the rent in this area south of Fifth is almost the same I was paying in New York City. I thought I was supposed to save all this money moving to Florida. And he said to me, you do know that area was developed to attract New Yorkers, didn't you? I'm like,
Oh,
no, how so? He said, you didn't notice the park looks almost exactly like Battery Park in Manhattan? I'm like, oh my God. And he's like, and there's a Smith and Walensky restaurant in the middle of the park, which is a New York City staple. I'm like, oh my God. And then I looked into literally these German developers developed this part of south of Fifth to be so familiar to New Yorkers. I felt like I was home. I felt duped by my own marketing strategies. I'm like, I totally fell for it because they created an atmosphere of familiarity. So I ask you as agents, like, what feels familiar to the people that you are attracting? I'll kind of segue into another story. I moved from South Fifth to Brickell, another part of Miami. I had a really keen agent who knew I was still in my sensibilities, a northerner. She picked up on that. She showed me apartments that had wood floors instead of tile that felt warm to me. The apartment I ended up choosing in downtown Miami had what I refer to as northern sensibilities about it. It had a warmth that was not typical of Miami apartments, which are typically, in my opinion, kind of cold and very modern. She knew she would get me hooked if she found something that felt familiar to me. So understand your clients, your individual clients. Where are they moving from? What stage of life, right? Are they grandparents now, or what stage are they new parents? Or, as I think, in my experience, everybody seems to move after having a second child. Like the first child you can stick in anywhere. You have the second child, you have to move. Like it's getting real,
guilty.
right? Life's getting real after the second child. So what stage of life are they at? And what do they need to feel? And this is where I believe home staging is so incredibly important, is to understand how does that home need to be staged for the typical family that would visit that home, and it needs to feel familiar. They'll feel emotionally, subconsciously hooked, just as I was. Third element is style. Now, for style, you would, again, it has a lot to do with staging. If they are, in fact, that family that's moving after the second child, are they a family that's likely to continue growing their family? And is it a very family home? Well, does one of the rooms need to be styled and staged with a crib, right? So that you're helping them through style. Of course, style is also obvious. And are they traditionally minded? Are they contemporary minded, Mediterranean minded? Like, what style of home? One of the things I used to do with my photography clients is pay really close attention to their clothing, because people choose to put on their bodies largely what they want to express to the world. So is that clothing traditional? Is it smart? Is it, and what I mean by smart is like Diane von Furstenberg, if some of you women might be familiar with that brand. And I've studied them for my book. They have a very interesting pricing psychology where they want to be perceived as the low end of the high end, so that their customers feel they made a smart decision. So it's not so highly priced that you feel stupid for blowing so much money, but they want to stay in the luxury market. So they're on the low end of the high end so that their buyers can feel smart about the decision they made. Okay. So there's a style to intellect, like, libraries and things like that. So you want to really understand what is the style of the people. And this goes also down to your branding and your website, how you're showing a house, that with the content you're putting together about showing a house. So really understand what style will this, and based on the layout and format of this house, who will this appeal to, and then replicate their style. Next is pricing, but for all of you, I would say it's more about value, especially now, than pricing. Is to really be able to express to. I mean, there's a whole lot of psychology to pricing. I like to think at the end of the day, a lot of times, people's decisions don't come down to money as much as we think. Anytime somebody's stumped by money, it's because we haven't given them a reason that's bigger than where they're hung up on the money. Okay. So that reason could be emotional and it could be value. But when people bump up against the ceiling of money, either they're expressing they don't want to spend anymore or they're hitting the top of their budget, what you need to do is help them feel an emotion that's bigger than the emotion that has them stuck, like the emotion of worrying about money. But realizing the emotion of a long-term decision and not having to move again is a bigger emotion than quibbling about the extra money right now. But then also, what do they need to feel? Is it a home they're purchasing that they're going to flip relatively quick? They're going to stay in it for 5 years. They're going to stay in it for 15 years. I worked with a home builder a while back that was building a community of homes for 55 and over. That's a very specific stage of life. And I helped him see the importance of even the layout of the homes with more flex spaces, because those grandparents 55 and over, they may not want massive amount of square footage at this point in their life. And yet they want to fit their family of 20 coming for Thanksgiving. So how can you design homes that have flex space for a dining room so that you can, you're not wasting the space all year long, but really high priority to families in that age group is whether they can fit their whole family about around the holidays. And so, pricing is a little more challenging in your industry in that it feels like it's fixed. The market is going to determine the value, the price, you could say. My understanding of the laws are going to introduce a little more restriction, but that there for you, there even more so have to speak the language of value and emotions. I think when up against regulations on pricing, you have to really focus on the emotion. I mean, they'll figure out what values you're triggering for them by you triggering their emotions and helping them see what's really important to them in the first place.
I couldn't agree more. So one thing, Jeff, that really, this is not the pricing necessarily of the house, but what we're seeing is that agents without value, they're going to start coming across people asking for commission discounts. So going back to what you said about pricing psychology, like speaking to the discount brokers, the discount agents, what kind of signals are you sending across to your clients that this is my value and it's worth a discount, versus the agent who is actually charging more? What do you think the perception would be for charging more versus offering a discount, especially as price points continue to rise and customers are becoming more affluent?
Yeah. The word that comes to mind is bond, right? You creating a bond with them makes it far less likely they're going to ask for a discount. I have bought and sold 14 times. So I myself have been through a number of transactions. And so I feel like I personally understand how hard a realtor works. I also think a lot of lay people don't realize the structure. And again, I don't know what the legalities will be coming, under this, but a lot of people don't understand the structure of real estate commission and how it gets divided so many times.
Can confirm.
Right. And I think one thing is, and maybe I'm naive and I'm willing to accept that, but I believe people are fundamentally good in this world. I really do. I think people are fundamentally good. And I will, if I'm naive, it's because I've spent 40 years working with people I really love. And I've worked with people I really love because I've attracted those people into my life. So, hey, if that's made me naive, that's great. I've never worked under you all have to work under contracts, but as a photographer, as a coach, I've never worked under contracts. I just work on honor system, and I've never not been paid for anything I've ever done, because I just don't I almost don't believe in its existence. Like, why would somebody not pay me? I'm such a good guy and we have such a great relationship. Like, why would you not pay me? It's just not in my realm of reality. So I would I think there's some mindset work here to do to really own your value, to just say, what I do is worth that 5-6%. It's hard work. You may have to explain when appropriate, and if it's legal, to explain the structure breakdowns. I don't think a lot of people understand how much a commission gets broken down and what you're really left with. Because I personally don't see how anybody can challenge for the amount of work that you all do as agents. I don't see how somebody can challenge what you're actually left over with in commission. It sounds like such a big number at the top. But at the end of the day, there's so many people have their hand in that pot that it's a lot of work for it. So I would say the biggest compensator for avoiding people asking you for a discount is to create a bond in the first place, to really feel like, A, you're attracting your ideal customers. Like you're understanding the principles of perception, familiarity, style. Understand those so that you're saying the right things. So we should dive into that a little bit more, but that's the fifth component about words. Like, you want to say the right things. You want to, one of the exercises I give my coaching clients, and any of you can play with this idea and see where it takes you. But I suggest that you write down 5 to 7, what I call self-identifying questions. Write down 5 to 7 questions your ideal client has in their head that they're probably not even verbalizing. By doing that, you are challenging yourself to understand what's going on in the world and in the minds and in the intimate world of the people that you want to serve. You can often use those very same questions in your marketing, because if you can prompt that, the goal is, here's what I think the goal in all marketing should be. Can you get people to say, wow, it's like you're in my head? If you can get people to feel that way, because they can tell, even without, again, before they've even contacted you, by what they're finding in researching you, what they're finding on the agency website, what they're finding out on you about your bios online, what they're finding, all the places they can find you. And yes, you may not, as agents, you may not have agency, excuse the pun, over the agency website. You may not have control of the agency website, but my gosh, you better take control over anything that's showing up with your name and face on it. Whether it's
So
the
Jeff, I'm going
page
to
or
pause
the
you there.
agency. I'm sorry.
I'm going to pause you there. So
Yeah.
one of the things that I'm going to do is a quick example. We're going to warm up the chat with this as well. So in the book Lingo, you go through like 5 or 6 examples of self-identifying questions. So if you guys are still with me, if you're not driving, drop in the chat as Jeff is asking you these questions. So Jeff, could you ask a couple of these questions? And if you feel like he's talking to you, drop a yes in the chat after you, sir.
Wow. Okay, now I wrote this book in 2017. It's published. Wait, I have no idea what's in that book now. And I've written another book since. But I'll give you a fun example that has nothing to do with real estate. But again, I'm a huge believer in getting ideas from other sources and making your own, because this is actually what makes you exceptional. If I just give you real estate information, you're going to sound like everybody else. One of my clients, I think this is such a fun story though. One of my clients, they make high-end comforters and pillows. They're an American company, but what's unique about them is that instead of goose down, they use milkweed, which is very interesting. First of all, milkweed it's sustainable. It's a weed, so it grows, but it has a number of attributes that is very favorable. For one, it's hyperallergenic, so people that can't use goose down in their pillows or comforters can use milkweed. But one of the strongest attributes of milkweed is that it controls body temperature better.
Okay.
All right. So I was having a meeting with their whole team, and I just top of my head, I came up with one of these self-identifying questions. I said to everybody on the call, how many of you, and think about all of you here, how many of you sleep with one foot outside of the comforter? And everybody kind of sheepishly like raised their hand. Like, this is a really weird question. Why is he asking this? And I said, well, we do that because as humans, that's how we regulate our body temperature. Like, we like the comfort of a comforter. That's why it's called a comforter. Talk about lingo, right? But it gets hot. So we stick our foot outside the comforter because we have all those nerve endings in the bottom of our feet that control body temperature. Now imagine you have a comforter that you don't have to do it. So we actually put that on their website, right? Do you sleep with one foot outside of the comforter? And then we go on to the website goes on to explain that with a comforter by this company, you won't have to, because the milkweed controls your body temperature and you won't get overheated. They told me they've gotten more emails on that question on their website. They're like, who would ever, I mean, somebody actually said to them, do you have a camera in my bedroom? Right. And here I said the goal is to get people to say it's like you're in your head. Like, that's literally like making people feel like you're in their bedroom. So I want you to understand your clients so well, your ideal clients, that you could imagine, what do I need to ask? Like, let's say you're a realtor who specializes in people moving from the north, right? If you're a relocation expert, that's something you have found great success with. Maybe you were a northerner at some point and you moved to a southern community, and that's something you specialize in. Or maybe it's just relocation, which has its own sets of stress and concerns and families that want to get their kids in schools. And you may be better to hold those concerns for a family better than another realtor. And that's something you should highlight. If you are a realtor who's been through this, you're a family that's moved numerous times and you know what it's like to get your kids registered in schools and get those school supplies. And, you might put together, if this is your specialty, you might put together a PDF that gives family these tips, like, how to prepare for, like, in that area that they're moving to, where the best place to go for school supplies, clothing, etc. Like, prepare something and really own the space that you're a relocation expert. So then you could think of all sorts of questions that are on the minds of that mom and dad. Like, what are some of the intimate questions that a mom and dad moving to an area might be looking for? It might be like, where's the best place to go get school clothes, right? So you could prompt that on your marketing materials to say, do you worry about this? Does this keep you up at night? Is this what you're wondering? Like, what are the problems, concerns, and things that are on the mind of someone relocating? If you can ask those questions, and you're the only realtor, maybe at all, or maybe of hundreds, there's no way you can't stand out to someone being relocated, because they're going to immediately know, gosh, this person really gets my experience. This person it's like they're in my head. This realtor gets what I'm about to go through or am going through. Again, that bond is going to make it, and seeing your value to that family. How do they even begin to ask you for a discount? You've taken, like I said before, no one's ever going to say, you make me feel completely seen, heard, and understood, therefore I must ask for a discount on my commission, on your commission. Like, no one's ever going to say that. So to me, the solution to overcoming the obstacle you all might be facing with commission reduction requests, worrying about getting sued, tighten up the bond so much that just comes off the table. People just can't even imagine going that far, because they consider you a friend at this point.
So what I'm hearing on the street, especially when I talk about ideal client and trying to figure out who people need to work with, I hear a lot, I want to work with first-time home buyers, I want to work with sellers. So what I'm asking the people that I'm talking to is, like, what's the difference between a first-time seller, like they've never sold a house before, and a last-time seller, like someone who's selling their last house and going to live with family or retirement home afterwards? So what you talked about with the self-identifying questions is really smart, because you're able to really pin down what they're concerned about and then really focus on solving those problems. So one of the pushbacks that I get, and this is where I'm going to have you jump back in, is, okay, so if I am limiting who I'm reaching out to with my marketing messages, aren't I going to be leaving business on the table? So how do we break free from that scarcity mindset and show that by shrinking your audience, you're expanding your commission? I'll let you take back.
Beautifully asked. And that is, it is a fear. And again, to me, it's been grounded in this old message that we have heard in business forever, that we should niche,
Mhm.
right? But the old definition of niche it just doesn't work anymore. So the old definition of niche is do one thing for one audience,
Mhm.
super narrow. My definition of niche is be really good at something. Like make that your area of expertise. If you are the first time buyer realtor, if you are the relocation expert, if you're really good with people 55 and over looking for, it doesn't mean they're going into 55 and over communities. I'm 60. I'm not living in one of those communities. I always make fun of old people. And then I'm like, oh my God, I'm old enough to live in one of those places. Not happening. Right. So I'm a 60-year-old that's looking for something that makes sense for me, but not in a gated community in Florida. Right. So you want to narrow what you're known for. That's your niche. Your niche is your area of expertise. Your niche is your reputation. Your niche is your area of specialty, for which people that are looking for that, more people that are looking for that, are going to be honed into you. Now, I will also say, every time you focus on your specialty, but you're going to spread your wings. So, for example, let's say you specialize in helping people 55 and over finding the perfect home, but it's not in a gated community. You get to know them, you build a relationship, you help them. They feel like, oh my gosh, it's like you're in my head. And then they say to you, well, you know what? My daughter and her husband are looking for a house. Are you going to help them? Can you help them? Absolutely. Okay. But how did you get into this family originally? Is because you were recognized for something that you chose to specialize in.
Mhm.
Like this realtor I worked with when I moved into downtown Miami, it was so powerful to me that she had northern sensibilities. Having originally, she was Latina, so she was, was Miami in a lot of ways was home and comfortable to her. It's not where she was from, but it made sense to her. But she had lived in Boston for a lot of years, so she had that northerner sensibility. So when I spoke about warmth, she's like, okay, hardwood floors over tile, right? When I spoke about a kitchen I'm inspired to bake in, right? I'm not looking for an ultra high modern kitchen that you never turn on the oven, right? I literally said to her, I said, I need a kitchen. I don't like to cook, but I love to bake. Like I need a kitchen I'm inspired to bake in, right? So I gave her examples of what I wanted to feel. And with her northern sensibility, she was able to find that, which, she described as an older building in Miami, which meant it was 12 years old. So, it's, find your area of specialty. You'll scoop up all the people that want that type of specialty. But I assure you, it's not going to be the only market you find. It's like Rochelle is saying, or self-employed borrowers. I tell you, as a self-employed person my whole life, you're absolutely right. I mean, buying a home when you're self-employed is a whole other game. Right? Ryan, you banks make us jump through hoops when you're self-employed.
Can confirm.
Yeah, it's brutal. So if you're an agent, and you know what? Here's the sad story here. So I've been praising the realtor who helped me find this condo in Miami. When I went to go sell it several years later, it was a disaster, and it broke the relationship I had with her. Somebody that I brought to, I hosted when I lived in Miami. I used to host waffle Sundays. So one Sunday a month, it was open door policy, and I would have upwards of 40 people in my house for waffles. I make really good homemade waffles from scratch, something I love to do. So it's how I built community. So we'd have 20 to 40 people show up on a Sunday morning for waffles, and she was always part of that. And the problem was, she was an agent who had no clue how to support me as a self-employed buyer when I was buying. I mean, when I moved to the condo originally, renting it, and when I went to go buy it is when it fell apart. So she helped me find the right place. I rented it for a couple of years, and then I had an opportunity to buy it. The buying process, it was horrible. It just went all wrong. She, had nothing to support me. So I will tell you, if you're somebody that specializes in self-employed buyers, like that's an expertise. And again, look at it a lot of times like, what are you really good, particularly in real estate? Like, what do you think you're really good in holding space for? Right? So where you might be an agent that has unlimited patience working with parents that are being relocated and have kids that need to go into school and are worrying about every little thing regarding those kids, you might have patience for that. Another agent would be going nuts. Okay, so one of the questions to ask yourself is, what do you find you have a particular ability to hold space for? And that will help you find your area of niche, whether it's patience or, the legalities involved with being self-employed. Like, there are things that, you always meet people that, I worked with a client a while back that she was a bookkeeper, an accountant who helped people who were in trouble with the IRS. And I asked her, I said, why do you do that? That sounds like the most miserable profession on the planet. And she thrives on it. She loves dealing with the IRS. I'm like, really? Right? So there's things that people really enjoy doing. So what do you love holding space for that somebody else can't? And that's another realtor friend of mine is ridiculously inspiring. Just even his voicemail is wishing you a fantastic day. It's like really upbeat. Right? So people that he would attract would want that, like, coaching, cheering on, like there's like a personal development angle to the house purchasing process. Like, that's something he's really good at holding space for. So what are you really good at holding space for which, if it were up to you, every one of your clients would be exactly doing that for them?
So I'm so glad you brought this up, and a light bulb just went off. So I don't know if you guys noticed that, but what Jeff just said, like, what are your skill sets and what are you good at? That's the question inside of the book lingo that just changed everything. So, I mean, think about it. At one point, we had 49 agents on a webinar on a Monday afternoon when it's the busy season. What other loan officer, I'm not tooting my own horn here, I'm giving Jeff honor because he helped me figure this out. Like, what other loan officer could get 49 agents in a room without knowing what you guys need and knowing what I'm good at and what I can apply to that? So don't glaze over what Jeff just said. It is, you need to understand yourself so well that you understand where you can step in and serve your clients at such a fundamental level. Then that value word that you guys are being beat over the head with right now, you have to provide your value. You need to talk about it so that way you can justify your commissions. You need to understand what you're good at and then be able to leverage that to benefit your clients. And once again, you have to do some internal searching before you can search external.
I love that you're saying. And I'll tell you what, your 10-minute bumper was, I mean, I do this for a living. I speak for a living. I have never spoken at a virtual event that had a better 10-minute bumper. Like, I wish that you kept it going so people, when they showed up right at the top of the hour, had a chance to see what you created there with the live video in the background and the music pumping. I'm like, I have never seen that. You're a mortgage broker who's an educator. Like, I mean, it's kind of phenomenal. I've never come across anyone in your industry that is driven by educating. And that, I go back to, yes, it's skill set, but I really want to encourage everyone to think in terms of, what are you particularly good at holding space for?
Mm-hmm.
I want you to look at it that way. And the reason I say that is because we don't always love doing what we're good at, but we get great joy and we innately come across passionately and giving when people feel like you're in your zone of doing what you love doing, and it's something you're really good at holding space for. Another angle that you can look at this, each of you individually, is I call it the list of compliments. Right? Make a list, put all your humbleness and all that stuff aside and make a list of things people have complimented you about throughout your life. Pay particular attention to the compliments that you brush off. You know, "Oh, right, you're such a good teacher." Yeah, whatever, you know, because the reason we brush it off is because it's so easy for us that we brush it off. It's comes so natural. Having started my world as a photographer and started coaching photographers originally, this is the biggest problem for people in the creative industry, because what they comes easy to them, that'll take me 10 minutes to do. So they don't charge for it. I don't care if your genius takes 10 minutes or takes 10 hours. What you're really good at that other people in the world aren't good at has tremendous value. So again, to face down the challenge you might be facing of people questioning your value, wanting to negotiate your commission, the best thing you can do is be so just in your space that you're really good at, that people feel like no one else, no other agent could have gotten me through this except Rochelle or Daphne or Stephanie or Orion. It's you're not an agent in that sense, but no other agent could have gotten me. There's another Orion here, but no other agent could have gotten me through that. That will stay with them forever. That's what will make you exceptional. That's where your referrals will come from. But you want to really understand what is the space that you are uniquely qualified to hold and what you're really good at holding that space. Make that your niche, if you will. Marketing, your branding. Here's a little tip. Think preview text. Okay. In getting ready for our conversation today, I've been spending some time at different real estate websites, which of course is usually run by the agency itself. And then, you can click on the button and see the agents within the agency. And most of them give you a preview to the agent, and then you can click on it and find out more about the agent. So you have to, if you are the expert of home relocation, let's say you come up with one of those self-identifying questions. A prospective client, your ideal clients, should see that self-identifying question first when they only see the preview of who you are, because that's what's going to hook them. That's what's going to get them to hit the more button and open up your page. When the first thing they see, a lot of times it's like bio information, and you look at a realtor's website and all the agents, they all read the same. Right. So then then it's like an online dating site. Then you wind up saying, well, who am I attracted to? You start looking at the photographs, and if you've got that going for you, all the more power for you. But what would really hook them and get them to take the next step is, imagine if you pose one of those self-identifying questions for who you're great at holding space for. That question gets them right in the heart. They're like, oh, this agent's got me. They're going to open up your page. They're going to contact you. They're going to be 70% on the way of deciding you're the agent for them before they even reach out to you. All you have to do, as I like to tell my clients, is don't screw it up. Like, they're 70% just, convinced you're the right agent for them. Don't mess it up, and you won't. But this is the process, so this is where those self-identifying questions, they're hooks. So another good example of as you were asking earlier about the fear of if I niche down, the reality today is, think of it as fishing, if you will. You have to cast a broad net, and then your branding and your self-identifying questions are the hook. But we live in a world of the internet. It's called internet for a reason, right? It's a broad place. So we're casting a broad net. Anybody and everybody can land on your agency's website and find you. So it's so broad, you have to reach out to a lot of people. Same thing on social. The strategy on social media is be out there a lot. Cast a broad
100%.
net. But hook your ideal customers because you're speaking their lingo. You're asking self-identifying questions that gets to their heart. You're sharing your values, your philosophies. your stories, your story of when you moved from point A to point B and how challenging it was. Share your story, share your philosophy, share your values, ask self-identifying questions. Just keep pounding it home in the way that you're speaking the lingo of the people you're really good at holding space for. And the broader you cast that net on social media and everything else on the internet, your words end up narrowing down. That's the whole point of lingo. You're speaking the words and the lingo of your ideal customers. It will narrow itself down to the point where you will attract your ideal customers and you'll keep away your non-ideal customers. They won't even bother you.
So I'm going to give you guys a quick explanation, not explanation, but I'm going to bring this home and take the pressure off of you guys. Like everything else, you guys get a ton of marketing messages. Do this. This is the newest Facebook thing you got to do. This is the latest hashtag thing. I'm going to make your life a little bit easier here. So inside of Columbus, Jeff, to give you perspective, there are about 30,000 transactions that happen every single year. So what I want you guys to do, if you guys are still awake and not driving, drop in the chat the amount of transactions that you need to do to be happy. The amount of transactions that you need to do to be happy out of that 30,000. Go ahead and light up the chat. So while you guys are doing that, I want to let you guys know that say that you want to work with first-time sellers who just had a kid and they're mixed race. Okay. So if you wanted to do 10 transactions in a year, and that would make you happy, that would feed your kids, pay for dance classes, all that, how hard would it be, or how easy would it be to find that specific type of person? If you want to find people who are downsizing, a widow that's downsizing and doesn't have any kids, can you find 10 or 20 of those people? You don't need to find 30,000. You just need to find the numbers that make you happy. So by narrowing it down, it gives you more focus on exactly what your marketing needs to be, to Jeff's point. And it gives you a lot more grace that you don't need everybody. You just need a handful of who you're looking for. So we're seeing here 20, we're seeing 30, 45, 50, 90, 72. So some of these are some big numbers, but they're still not 30,000. Right. So segueing into our next question. And once again, Jeff, thank you. We're at the past the hour point and you're still here trucking with us. So I'm grateful for you, sir. Okay, so you've done a good job convincing the need to try to narrow down who you're working with, correct your messaging, create this atmosphere to where they feel like home. But okay, so secondary question, we're on level 2 now. How do I figure that stuff out?
Go to where they are. Right? Whether it's, and that can mean a lot of different things. It could mean physical, as I did when I was starting out, I went to high-end brands. But let's say, and this is the thing in a service business, is that when you're in a service business, you're often not serving people exactly like you. You might be, right? You might be. As like I said, if you are an agent specializing in helping young moms and dads relocate with kids, that might be your own life, or it may have been your life 10, 20 years ago. My point is that you need to read up. Like, so when I say go to where they are, it might be online publication, it might be blogs, right? It might be blogs that they're currently reading. I mean, I used to read Town and Country magazine and all the upscale rich people's magazines that I had to do the research to find them. But in that reading, I began to understand the psychology. I began to understand even familiar brands, because my clients would talk about a brand or something that meant nothing in the world I came from, but I didn't want to come across stupid. And well, what is that? So there's a way of just familiarizing yourself. And I would say just go where they are, read what your ideal, like once you've honed down on the space that you are uniquely qualified to hold and you understand who your ideal client is, understand their world. That's why step number 1 is perception. How do they see the world? What are they reading? What influences how they see the world? So go to where they are, whether it's online publications, whether you can call people who fit that profile and say, I mean, I have to do this as a speaker. I speak in industries all the time. I actually spoke to an event planner this morning about a possible event in Europe speaking to home
Whoa.
stage professionals. Like, I know I can serve them, but I'm going to have to do my research to understand what's going on in the world of home stage professionals. What are their challenges? What do they want? So I'll interview home stage professionals. I'll read everything I can to prepare my talk so that it's uniquely for them. The same thing with, speaking to all of realtors. I have done a fair amount of work in real estate before, but I also wanted to know more. So that's why I was doing my own due diligence. So go to where your clients are, even if the world is familiar to you. I think you're at a little bit of an advantage if you happen to be at that age as well, where you've relocated, moved your kids. You have a different level of compassion and empathy, and that's going to certainly make a connection as well. So that, to me, that's why I say step number one is perception. Like, you have to be willing to do the work, to walk in the shoes of the people you're going to serve and understand what the world looks like from their perception.
Yeah, I think you really need not to underplay that. Talking to the audience, not to Jeff, but like, it might come off as a little bit creepy, but the amount of hours I think about you guys, the amount of hours that I put into researching what you're struggling with, that's really what this takes. And that's what Jeff's talking about. Yeah. So having conversations, interviewing people who are your ideal client and asking them, what are you struggling with? And then noting that, and then moving to try to take action. So we're going into level 3 here. So you understand level 1, that you need an ideal client. Level 2, we just broke out of. Level 3 is once you go and start doing your research of who you want to work with and figuring out what they need, this is where the value comes in that you've been beat over the head with. And this is an unlock for the people who are not here, they're going to miss. So if someone tells you, for an example, I don't have money saved for down payment, that's an objection. And you providing value as an agent, you can create a offer or a solution to that problem. For someone who is downsizing and has way too much stuff, you can create a offer or show value in how to get rid of their stuff, or a single mom, or a family, or whatever. So, but you have to understand what they're struggling with. And then that takes you into level 3, to where you can start creating value and start solving their problems. And you're taking that word value and turning it into an offer. And that's where you really start separating yourself from the other 9,000 agents here in Columbus and the other 1.6 million agents that you're competing with nationwide. So going to creating offers, creating value, what are some mistakes that you think agents could make? Because a lot of people want to avoid mistakes. What are some mistakes that agents could make when trying to solve a problem like this for their ideal client?
Yeah. From what I can see, having done some research, honestly, I think the number one mistake that agents are doing is they're not taking control of their brand. And you are your brand as an agent, right? And you have to just Google yourself and look at all the ways that you're coming up, right? The website, your agency's website is just one place you're appearing, but it's your LinkedIn profile, it's your social media. And if you're not appearing in those places, you might want to think about that too, right? So, because people are going to seek you out. So I think the number one problem that I've seen is that people haven't taken control of their brand and expressed in their brand messaging the emotional triggers that are going to be appeal to your ideal clients. It's like I said right in the beginning, when the disconnect, when I with my Exceptional Business Academy, the disconnect when people said their number one goal was to reach ideal clients, but branding, that's nobody even asked for that. Like, that's what it's like, what attracts your ideal clients is everything you're putting out in the world. Mm-hmm. Everything where people are finding out about you. They're looking to find a connection with somebody who they feel like gets them, understands them. So it's back and forth, right? You need to define whose space you're particularly good at holding, say what needs to be said that appeals to them so that they find you. So you have to take control. So that to me is one of the biggest disadvantages or the mistakes I'm seeing agents are doing is not fully taking control. And you can do that as well by the content you put out, right? The posts that you're making on social media, the newsletter you might develop, the content that might be available in publications in your community and such. Being at events and networking where you get to speak. Here's the beautiful thing is that when I help people really figure out who their ideal client is and the space that they're uniquely qualified to hold, as I like to say, once you figure that out and you've gained that clarity, you can't unsee it, right? That's the beautiful thing about clarity. When somebody gets clear on what they're meant to do, they can't unsee it. What's beautiful about that is that the words that come out of your mouth just flow out of your mouth. You will speak so naturally because you're so impassioned by who you can serve and how you're uniquely qualified for them. Everything else becomes easier. Networking events, writing content, writing social media posts, because you know who you're writing for and what you need to say. It's what you feel. So it's not a stretch. You're not trying to be somebody you're not. You've just figured out that you are uniquely qualified to hold space for this person, this type of buyer or seller. And knowing that you're speaking their lingo and you're aligned, it just, everything else is easier and you can't unsee it.
So if I heard you correctly, by doing this and speaking your lingo, you're basically minimizing imposter syndrome.
100%. And it's, the other long held rule in business is the 80-20 rule, right? 80% of your income comes from 20% of your clients. That's a really outdated model that works really well for corporations and governments because no independent business owner or agent can afford to waste your time on 8 out of 10 people, right? The 80-20, if 80% of your income comes from, if 80% of your income comes from 20% of your people, then you're literally wasting your time on 8 out of 10 people. Nobody has the time or the energy to afford on that. Right. So you therefore, to me, it's like ground zero. You have got to attract your ideal clients. So all your clients pay off. And to do that, you are just, like I said, it's a beautiful process of dropping into who you are more clearly so that you're aligning yourself with the people that you serve. And you're absolutely right. There's nothing imposter about that. It's actually you being willing to be the best of who you are and what you're innately good at and qualified in personality and skill set, aligned with the people that want that, and everything else is easy.
Love that. Love that. So Jeffrey, once again, thank you so much. If you guys watching, are you guys finding this helpful? Because I feel like I'm watching a masterclass here. And once again, I'm grateful to be talking to one of my business heroes. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and have you guys start dropping your questions in the chat specifically for Jeffrey. So if you have something that's unclear, once again, your brain, my brain, Jeffrey's brain, your brain, if there's something that's not clear, or you're wondering, okay, so now I have levels 1, 2, and 3. What's the next unlock that I got to be focusing on? Start dropping that in the chat. So I know Emily asked right up front, are your waffles really as good as you tout they are in your podcast and in your book?
They really are, I have to say. I mean, they're made from scratch, and I separate the whites and yolks from the eggs, and I beat the egg whites, a little vanilla in there. And at Christmas, I make eggnog waffles that are to die for because it's instead of milk, I'm using eggnog. Hey, 40 people come on a Sunday for waffles. I'm doing something right. So, to me, it's all about community. I mean, hey, if you're an agent, it would be a great idea, and the word has spread. I met a husband and wife in a pool in Key West. Somehow we got talking about this, and I talked about waffle Sundays, and they said, "Oh my gosh, do you mind if we steal that idea?" I said, "Not at all." Next thing I know, I got an email from them. They live in Ohio. I'm not sure what part of Ohio, but they live in Ohio, and they're now hosting waffle Sundays on occasion. So the word has spread.
So I'm glad you brought up the word community because I was listening to your podcast. And by the way, feel free to talk about your podcast and gush on yourself for a little bit. But you were talking to Pat Flynn, and how he's been able to create this community around Pokemon cards. So a gentleman who is my age, who's really good in the community space, building communities. But like, is that level 4 to where you're understanding your ideal client so well that you're able to gather them en masse with you at the center? Is that level 4?
Well, great question. And it has everything to do with, like we said, I've always told my kids, I'm convinced I'm going to end up on the Tonight Show about waffles. It'll have nothing to do with all the stuff I work really hard for. Same thing with Pat, right? Here he ends up building this massive community around something he's passionate about, Pokemon cards. It doesn't really have a whole lot to do with his original work, but in a way it does. It has to do with community. So, again, there's a connection between just understanding what you're particularly good at, what your value. I have a high value for bringing people together. Right. When I build community, it never occurred to me about building the community for myself. I was interested in getting people together and watching. And I had an open kitchen, especially in Miami, a very open kitchen. So I was in the kitchen with 4 or 5 waffle irons going, but nothing meant more to me than to look out and see people connecting with one another, because that was the community I was looking to strive. And actually, if you go to my website, jeffreyshaw.com, you'll see at the bottom of the homepage, I tell the whole story about waffles and tie it into the work that I do, because I'm a connector. I like to get people connected, and I like to support people and build relationships, and it has everything to do with who I am as a coach. So, the community you build can likely be in support of something right outside of your area of specialty as a realtor. The name of the podcast, by the way, is yes, that's the website. The podcast is The Self-Employed Life. It's on every app out there.
Self-Employed Life.
Yeah.
So once again, trying to be respectful of your time, sir. Once again, this is fantastic. So you said that you had a gift that you wanted to give people. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, and I thought about this long and hard and thought it's a little bit of an unusual give for an audience of agents, but not really. So it's called self-employed assessment. So you can get it at self-employedassessment.com. What is it? This is a custom algorithm. All right. So I worked with a researcher and a scientist to build this. So it'll ask you 6 questions. From those 6 questions, you'll get back a pretty thorough report, a very thorough report on your strengths and weaknesses, but particularly in what I refer to the self-employed ecosystem, which are personal development, business strategies, and mindsets and habits. So as agents, you may or may not consider yourself self-employed, because I know you understand you're under the umbrella of an agency, but I would challenge that and say, no, you're self-employed, because anytime your level of effort is relative to your income, you're self-employed. Right. So, you all work very hard. You earn your money. To me, you're self-employed. I think the self-employed assessment would be very helpful to you. So, as I said, 6 questions. It won't take you too long, but it's really the results you get back will really, I think it'll have you on the process of being to figure out who you're meant to serve.
100%. So to piggyback off of Jeff's gift, I've been working on a tool, and some of you guys got a sneak peek of this, but I have also created something. So I've dropped Jeff's link in the chat. Make sure to go to it. It'll be available on the replay. I'll make sure that you guys get access to it. But one of the questions that Jeff just brought up is, okay, so like I need to go deeper on who I'm trying to serve. Well, there's a lot of confusion when you're trying to start doing this research. So what I've done is I've put together a questionnaire. It's longer than Jeff's. I wish I could do it in less questions. But as you're going through, you're starting to answer questions. I'm asking you questions on who you want to work with. And it's going to take you to where once you get those questions answered, you are going to have an AI research assistant that you can talk to. So I don't know if you guys know this or not, but so you know ChatGPT. ChatGPT now has a function to where you can talk to it, not by typing, but you can actually talk to it and have a conversation with it. So at the end, once you understand who your ideal client is, you follow the instructions, you're going to have an AI marketing assistant that will help you market to and understand your ideal client better. So I've dropped that in the chat as well. So make sure that you go to Jeff's, take the assessment so you can understand yourself better. And then also go to the link that I dropped in the chat and create your own AI marketing assistant that understands you and your ideal client and how to market to it. Once again, I'm just going to give that to you. And Jeff was gracious enough to give you his gift that he probably spent a lot of hours trying to put together for you. So once again, thank you, sir. I appreciate you so much. Is there any parting thought that you want to bring up before we adios?
Well, last is playing off AI. I think a really fun exercise that I've been giving some clients recently is imagine someone recognizable in your profession. So I mentioned the realtor earlier that is highly inspiring and motivational, but he's a very deep thinker, very philosophical. So I challenged him. I said, go to ChatGPT and put in a prompt that says, if Socrates was a real estate agent, what are some things that he might say? And got back an unbelievable description. I mean, you read it and you're like, this would be a very unique realtor. And I had an
100%.
interior designer who I'm working with do the same idea. And she prompted, if Tony Robbins was an interior decorator, or designer, what are some things he would say? And it is incredibly accurate. So a really fun exercise for you to help to understand like how to speak to your now ideal client. Maybe think of some recognizable person of the world. If they were in your role, what would they say? How would they talk? What are some questions they would ask their clients? It's, again, don't steal anything verbatim, but it's a great thinking tool, great thinking partner.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we're at probably the end of the show. I'm going to cut you loose for the day, sir. Once again, you have been so gracious with your time and your gifts and your experience and your stories. I could not ever repay you for what you've done for us today. So
you need to.
Well, checks in the mail, I haven't emailed yet. But so what I want you guys to do, last exercise, is I want you guys to drop the one thing, not that you learned, but the one thing that you're going to take first steps on. Because we've all gone to seminars, we've all gone to events, we've all gone to webinars. We learn a ton, but then we don't execute. So before we wrap up here today, drop in the chat, what is the one first right move that you're going to start making progress on? And then I hope this was not a wasted exercise for you, because you're going to take action to start serving I'm looking at the wrong camera, shoot. Hope you're going to start serving who you want to work with, because the single mother, the family who's just having another kid, someone who's getting divorced, someone who's downsizing, they need your help more than you understand. They are waiting for you to show up. And until you can figure out who you are, you can't help them, but they're counting on you to show up because they already exist. We need you to be better, so that way you can be here next year and you can serve at a deeper level, because that's my mission for myself. I want to help you. Jeff is here to help you, but I need you guys to do better so we can be better for everyone else who's counting on us to show up. So Jeffrey, thank you so much, my friend.
Truly my pleasure. You have a great community. I appreciate being here.
Yeah. All right. So once again, the replay is going to be going out afterwards after it processes, but feel free to take a quick picture, share this with social media so Jeff can get some love on social. Keep an eye out for that replay. And if you guys need anything from either of us, I'm sure Jeff would be welcome to a conversation as well. Absolutely. So thank you guys. I appreciate your time. I know this is an hour and a half and I know it's valuable, but thank you, Jeff. Thank you, sir.
My pleasure.